these games were definitely worth persevering for. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 video games that got better after launch. For this list, we're taking a look at games whose troubled launch or rushed development caused glitches, performance issues, or just general suckiness. We won't be including already great games that managed to gain even more praise like The Witcher 3, but we'll be focusing on games that were nowhere near their potential upon release.
Bravo, team. Work together, and you might survive.
Number 10, Grand Theft Auto Online. Even if Rockstar's record-breaking open-world title was single-player only, you'd still probably feel like you got the most out of your $60. With a fully functional online mode, however, it was destined to be the best value-for-money game ever.
Maybe you can buy an apartment, so friends can stop by and hang out.
This ambitious version was flawed early on though, as players who managed to even get through the clogged servers were frequently losing their progress they made in the unimaginative gameplay offerings. 3 years and upwards of 20 free-of-charge DLC updates later, the technical issues are largely absent and you have more game modes than you could possibly need. With customizable races, heists, deathmatches, and even a first-person mode, you barely need to pick up another game ever again. Number 9, Marvel Heroes.
Bad guy, it's Bob Day!
With the success of Marvel's cinematic universe rumbling ever onwards, developing any sort of property featuring Iron Man and company is one of the safest investments you can make. When Gazillion Entertainment first released their free-to-play ARPG, however, it seemed like they'd squandered the chance to make the most of Marvel's enormous roster through dated graphics, yawn-inspiring gameplay, and way overpriced microtransactions. All credit goes to Gazillion though, as they listened to fan feedback and began rolling out graphical updates alongside dramatically reworked game modes and the release of new characters to coincide with their movie counterparts. Just to emphasize the forward momentum, a year is slapped onto the end of the name, signifying even more reasons for players to return. Number 3, Vampire: The Masquerade, Bloodlines. This adaptation of White Wolf's World of Darkness source material came tantalizingly close to Western RPG stardom, and with a few months more of development, it might have actually reached that standard upon its initial release. Sadly, its unexpectedly intelligent script was let down by buggy AI and combat.
Released in an utterly unfinished state, ridden with bugs, glitches, and crashes, and in many ways barely playable.
Areas that it seemed would never be addressed as developers Troika Games closed a few months later. In came Werner Spall, a simple fan riding on a white steed to fix the technical issues and elevate this world of werewolves and vampires to heights it could have never reached the first time around. His decade-long involvement has even added original content, which, despite upsetting some fans, took the game's sales from 80,000 to nearly 500,000.
What I'm offering is not generosity, but the opportunity to transcend the fate woven by your sire.
Number 7, SimCity 2013. In spite of warnings about the perils of always online, EA plowed on with this controversial form of DRM for their reboot of the popular city building series. As predicted, it caused a nightmarish launch featuring rammed servers and irate customers bemused at the lack of any offline modes.
Work, damn it! Work, damn it! Work, damn it! Ah, there we go. Fuck it, I'm going to bed.
Once a slew of patches made it accessible though, the concept of synchronized cities affecting each other was actually kind of awesome, even if it was on a relatively small scale compared to other games in the genre. 10 months later, in a double whammy of overdue freedom, offline single-player and mod support were added, as EA finally relented and awarded the fans something of a victory.
In single-player mode, I can still build and control multiple cities and share resources between my cities, all while playing offline.
Number 6, Destiny.
We may want to move back.
Bungie have always said they never wanted you to think of Destiny's first release as the finished game. And thankfully for all of us, it wasn't, as $500 million for its confusing storyline and dull gameplay mishmash would have been a rather gross waste of a development and marketing budget.
I could tell you of the power of the darkness, its ancient enemy.
Instead of hiding from the criticism, Bungie began weekly news updates to create dialogue with players and involve them in the game's progression. This engagement was a huge factor in the critical success of the Taken King expansion, as the story elements were straightened out. However, the following expansion, Rise of Iron, hasn't really kept that positive momentum going, due to relying a little too heavily on recycled content.
Sepic's Prime? It's supposed to be dead.
Here's hoping that Bungie doesn't slide too far back into its old bad habits.
Even old wolves still bite.
Number 5. Fallout New Vegas.
200 caps gets you my watchful eye for a trip to the South Gate. Done and done.
People seem to forget that while New Vegas may have the best quests in the series and was more of an RPG, it had probably the roughest launch out of any of Bethesda's oft-derided open-world games. This time, the funny bugs that always came along with a Bethesda game, like the notorious head twirling, were outnumbered by crashes and freezes, leaving players in fear of losing their progress at any moment.
You're mine.
Unlike the fanbase years later for Fallout 4, there wasn't a huge amount of outrage, as players waited patiently for official patches and DLC that added stability, new storylines, and level cap raises. Now, many years later, the modding community has created over 10,000 separate modifications that range from very silly to completely comprehensive. Whatever your complaint may be, there's probably a mod for it, and New Vegas stands as probably the best of the 3D Fallout titles.
What do you have for me? Ah, so it went down like that, huh?
Number 4. Battlefield 4. Having learnt apparently nothing from the SimCity release debacle, EA charged headfirst into yet another rushed launch for their flagship FPS franchise. Although sales figures were impressive early on, EA was targeted by lawsuits from investors and labeled the worst company in America. All this negative press triggered a change in approach for the company, engaging fans in the community test environment to identify bugs and release free maps that allowed for Battlefield's enormous, open-ended chaos to be the focus for players. New features continue to be rolled out as well. As recently as June of 2016, a fresh user interface was implemented to improve matchmaking and connect it to Hardline and Battlefield 1. You're getting better, EA. You still got a way to go, though. Number 3. Splatoon. A Nintendo release that doesn't feature any of their established mascots is a rarity, and it certainly showed why when this brand new third-person shooter hit stores. From the beginning, it was clear that they had developed a colorful, addictive game, but it lacked so many features that would be standard for a game in this genre. Voice chat and private lobbies were absent, while maps, weapons, and game modes were unusually bare bones.
Full of missing features at launch like stage selection, enough stages, enough game modes, enough weapon variety.
Nintendo had decided to hold back large portions of the content, perhaps to avoid intimidating players new to the genre, but when that content did come, dedicated Inklings finally received the depth to complement the exceptionally messy core gameplay. Number 2. Final Fantasy XIV. Square Enix were planning on making an MMORPG that would stay true to the Final Fantasies of years past and rival World of Warcraft in the genre. The masters of the RPG eventually did just that, but it required a complete rebuild of their first effort to get to that level. Despite a disastrous testing period revealing swaths of devastating bugs, the game released 6 months before its intended launch date. Inevitably, both the game and players' trust were broken, meaning the only way forward was a total reset. A Realm Reborn, or version 2.0, was everything its predecessor should have been, bringing in 5 million paid subscribers and narrowly avoiding a disaster for the Final Fantasy legacy. Before we reveal our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions. Number 1. Diablo 3.
BlizzCon high five for PvP.
If you managed to make it past the infamous Error 37 and all the way to the endgame content, you were probably pretty disappointed. Anyone will tell you that the loot is the best part of a Diablo game, and with the real money auction house that nobody asked for in full swing, it seemed like Blizzard was keeping the market on epic gear really tight, meaning you basically had to use the auction house to get better stuff, which I probably don't need to tell you really sucked.
Bam. Purchased. Sent to his character. And equipped.
Then, the Reaper of Souls expansion landed, and with it, the Loot 2.0 patch, which basically fixed the game overnight, completely overhauling the endgame content, adding the new adventure mode, remixing the difficulty levels, and showering you with sweet gear. Diablo 3 was back on track to live up to the legacy of its predecessors. Now, years on, Blizzard continues to support the game with seasonal content, extra gear, and even some new areas and enemies. Diablo 3 is better than ever.
To hell with you, witch!
Very well. Let the games begin.
Do you agree with our list? Which games did you hate upon launch, only to find out that they'd become good a few years later?
You cannot hide from me, no matter what form you choose to wear.
For more top 10s that are great the first time, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
Oh, I fully intend to do so.